9:04, but we won't make you wait. We'll get started. So my name is Stacey Joyce, and I am the program manager at Partners in Research that deals with most of our educational programming and certainly the things we're going to talk about today. I'm your go-to person. If you get started with us and you need some help along the way, you just give me a shout and I'm here to help you out. Don't hesitate to do that. I am much happier to spend some time with you and make sure everything's going fine than to hear that something didn't work and you were afraid to contact me. So you do have my email address here. Once we are chatting back and forth, you'll also have access to my direct phone number. So let's talk about Partners in Research. That's the nonprofit organization that all this programming is offered through. We are a registered Canadian charity and we focus on the STEM subjects. We shove everything we can under that umbrella. So if it's a little bit kind of on the fringe of STEM, we'll still try to make it happen for you. But if it is something that is purely arts, you can always ask, and we do make exceptions occasionally for some special events, but our focus is definitely in the STEM areas. And our mission is to highlight the value of research and information-based decision-making. And we do that by connecting K-12 students with experts in the fields of STEM, usually post-secondary researchers and instructors at universities and colleges. So the first program I want to tell you about today is our VROC program, a Virtual Researcher on Call. This is fully interactive video meetings so that your class is connecting directly with a researcher or an expert, and you have two-way communication in audio and video. In PIR Live Event and the French version En Direct, we do live webinars, and that's the platform we're using today. So you don't have the ability to speak to the panelists, which would be Clayton and myself, but you do have the ability to chat questions at any time, and then the host of that session, in this case it would be me, we could say Clayton is our guest. I would relay those questions to Clayton in real time. He would answer them with his audio and video. So your students would still have interaction there, and they would be able to get answers in real time. We record all of those live events and we post them on our YouTube channel, and that's what we call PIR TV. There are some other video content there as well, with some interviews with different STEM experts talking about what it's like to do what they do. Some of them are about 5-minute videos. The live events are typically about 30 minutes. And so if you can't make it at the date and time that we've scheduled a webinar for, you can always access that recording later. And the last program I don't want to speak at length about today, but I do want you to be aware, is Sanofi Biogenius Canada. So this is an elite biotechnology competition, like a science fair, on the same level as sort of Canada-wide science fair for grade 9 to 12 students. And it's all biotechnology focused. They're matched with a mentor. They do their research in a lab under that principal investigator or postdoctoral fellow's mentorship. And it's their own project, their own design. The mentor helps them to pare it down to something that they can accomplish in that time frame, or help to guide them along the way to different opportunities they have, given equipment, etc. And then they compete with their project outline and any results that they have at regional competitions, 9 of them across Canada, and the regional winners advance to the national competition, and their expenses are paid to go to that competition. The winner of the national competition goes on to the international competition at Bio International each spring in the US. I believe it's Chicago next year. So all of this educational programming, everything that you would talk to me about or someone else from our organization, how much does it cost? The beautiful answer is nothing. We have funding from government sources, post-secondary institutions, and other partners that allow us to offer this programming to you at no cost. So I'm not here to sell you anything. I am here to show you what you have available to you and how you can best make use of it. So first I want to talk about PIR Live Event. So we talked a little bit about this already. They're webinars, they're broadcast across Canada, and they're scheduled. So You wouldn't request a live event. You would check out our schedule of what is coming up in the next month or two and have a look if anything matches when you have your class or when you can slot it in, a topic that you're interested in or you want to introduce your students to. And we change the topic, the grade level each time. So when you look at a listing for PIR Live Event, it will tell you what it is that we're discussing, who our guest is, and what grade level we are sort of intending it for. That doesn't mean that you can't join if we suggest that it's intended for grades 5 to 8 and you have a grade 9 class that you think would benefit. I think they would, and you can join in as a grade 9 class. So it's not limited, but we try to give you that as a guidance so that you don't join a talk as a grade 12 biology class and find out that we're talking about something at the level of a grade 2 class. We operate these live events as a presentation with a Q&A, or sometimes we do virtual tours, sometimes we do demonstrations. You can see here in the images, these are 2 live event images from 2014 or 2015, 2016. One with Maria DeRosa on top here. She was showing us some chemical changes and some chemistry demos to get some oohs and ahs. And this is Dr. Sabat at the Royal Military College of Canada in an optics lab. And he was showing us a little laser here, and he showed us some fiber optics and different things through his talk. So what technology do you need to participate? This one, you need a little less. So PIR Live Event, because you don't interact by audio and video, all you need is your internet-connected computer and speakers. And then you can type your questions in and submit them whenever you have questions. So the next program is VROC.
Stacey?
Yes, do you want to interject there, Clayton?
Sure. So maybe I'll just interject with the experience that we had. So ours was slightly different, and maybe set it up for us a little special. When we did at one of our live events, we had just finished a stem cell portion of our genetics unit, and it was with our grade 12s, and you had a live seminar that you allowed our class to be a part of.
Mm-hmm. That was the original format that we had for live events. And as we get participation across Canada, we no longer have live classes involved, but the experience is somewhat similar. It's just that your students were given a chance in turn to verbalize their questions.
Right. So it was an excellent experience because the person was very knowledgeable and it was very topical. Like you said, we couldn't book it at a time that we wanted, but when we looked at your list, we saw that there was an expert in the university talking about stem cell research, and it was really interesting because our students had just finished doing a lot of research on the internet and in textbooks, and some of those things are out of date or not necessarily correct. And as they started listening to the expert and hearing things that were happening right now in 2015, and it's kind of like a little conflict of, well, we learned this, but this is what's actually happening in the real world. So listening to those experts speak at the live seminar and being able to ask those questions, whether or not it was through verbal, oral, or typing, was a great experience for our students.
Good. And the other thing I should mention is that we're always open to feedback and ideas. So our schedule is put out there, and you can't per se request a live event. But at the same time, if there's something you know is coming up, say in semester 2 and we're in semester 1, we haven't scheduled out our live events yet, then you can absolutely give us an idea saying, I think it'd be great to do a live event in this topic. And around, mid-March or something like that. And I can certainly look into making that happen as we schedule things out for the next part of the school year, which I am doing right now, by the way, for the fall. So if you have any ideas, don't hesitate to reach out and let me know what would be most useful for you. So just a reminder, you can use the chat function. You can find that button in the top left-hand corner of your window. And if you have any questions along the way, just toss them out. You don't have to wait until the end. I will sort of keep an eye on that, and I may answer it in the middle, or I may keep it to the end to answer it. But go ahead and throw some questions out there in the chat as you think of them. So the next program we have is VROC, or Virtual Researcher on Call. And this one is a bit more tailored to your class, and it's something that you would put in motion yourself. You can certainly ask me for help if you need to, but there's a lot of self-serve options available here. So once you sign up for the program, you would be able to access our directory of experts, and you can email them to plan a session, let them know you know, what it is that your students are learning, what grade are your students, what are you hoping to discuss, and when are you available. And then you can start that conversation to schedule something, assuming the expert has availability, which they usually do. You may have to push and pull your date a little bit depending on how much notice you're giving them. But then you're tailoring that interaction to exactly what your class needs at that time. And your students have the option to verbalize their question in real time and ask that expert and then get their answer right away, which is quite a powerful experience. Clayton, perhaps you can comment. I know you've had numerous experiences with this type of video conferencing for sure.
Yes, this is one of the more powerful pieces. I really like this. I'll talk about two of them in particular. I'm trying to spread it across the sciences. So one of the ones I'll talk about is physics. So in grade 10 physics, we focus on optics. And one of the things as a teacher you're always trying to do is engage your students in trying to find something that's, you know, that's going to enhance the curriculum, but also support the curriculum. And with the physics, what we had is we had this one person from Queens, actually, and he was not a professor of physics, but he worked with lasers, and he worked with a lot of optical devices and applications. And he was using the lasers and the optics in a biological sense. He was more of an engineer. And what was really good about this professor is that he was a living example of how the sciences all work together, and you can't just take one science and make it happen. So he started off the session by asking the students to find a photo or a picture or something that they had taken. And we uploaded them to a site where he could kind of peruse all these photos. And then we sat for about half an hour in class, and he just started talking about the optical effects. So someone took a picture from underwater in their pool. Someone took a picture from a church. He had just traveled back from Spain or something like that for some academic conference, and he had taken some photos, and he was showing the diffraction and the refraction and some really cool optical effects. And then for the next, I guess it was 3 months, because we had him with us once a week is what we were trying to do the connection for. So Wednesday was our day, and we'd connect for often 10, 15 minutes, and we'd just talk about something really topical with the content. So once a week, he would come in. The students were super excited. They had prepared questions. Initially, no one asked any questions. It's kind of like our class now, where we kept on encouraging, asking questions. Everyone kind of sat there, didn't want to be the one to, stick up their hand. It was interactive, right? So it wasn't text-based. The camera was focused on our class. So when a student had a question, they would just say it, and you'd hear them. And so he would have questions for our class, or he would have answers. So we just did an optical bench experiment, and we're looking at focal lengths, and the students had a question about a camera. We had a presentation where everybody had to pick a technology and talk about CATs or PET scans or microscopes or police photo radar or something, and everyone was giving a presentation. And before the students gave a presentation, we actually had the professor model what the presentation was going to be like, and he used something that was so obscure but so cool that none of the students would have found on the internet, because they don't know what to look for. And so he explained his really cool optical technology, and he was able to model what the students were supposed to do. And then when the students were giving their presentation, he came in for a few minutes, and he kind of watched virtually some of the presentations and then commented. So that was a really excellent optics grade 10 interaction that we had for the entire semester. And another one, I'll stick with the same one. A different professor at U of T, he was, you've probably seen this online, where people take a concave mirror and they focus the light on a piece of paper or something like that, and it kind of, it heats up as a fuse, and then it blows up, and it's kind of, it's kind of a cool experience. And you talk about the optics of the situation. So he was down, he was just walking out, he had his laptop, and he had one of his graduate students helping, and they're kind of walking around with him. I think he was using his phone. he's very engaging, and he actually demonstrates something very similar where he was focused in the sunlight and he was explaining the optics, he was engaging with the students. And what was a really good experience for the students was to look at these professors and see that they were real people, that they weren't just some kind of, you know, this person on the other side of a wall, the other side of a desk who was antisocial, who was unapproachable. The students were, well, he's kind of cool. He talked about his kids who are very similar age to the kids in the school. So as an experience, in addition to the academics, there's also the social piece, the social responsibility, the asking questions. I've been in so many with my classes. Every single one of them have been a very different experience, and every one of them has been an excellent experience. So I'm always a very strong advocate for getting students to talk to other experts apart from the teacher standing in front of the class.
Mm-hmm. Those are great, great examples. Thank you for sharing. My favorite example is the teachers who will tell me they absolutely had the answer or the example to talk to with their students. And they just knew that given the class, the particular day, whatever the case may be, that it just wasn't going to reach all the students the same way. So they contacted an expert to talk about the same thing that they could talk about themselves. It wasn't that their capacity, their knowledge wasn't there, but it was a much more powerful experience for the students to hear those answers or hear that information from an expert, that they were getting to ask questions of a professor, and that was a really powerful experience for them, sort of validating those questions that they had. So for this program, it's good to know, what do you need in order to participate? This one, you need a little bit more. You need the same things you need for a live event. You need those speakers. You need an internet-connected computer or at least a tablet. But you also need a webcam and a microphone. So in my case, I'm using a headset for a microphone. Sometimes I use my internal microphone, in fact, most of the time. But given that it's summer, I have a loud air conditioner nearby, so I thought I might be better off using the headset for you today. My internal speakers are good enough, and my internal webcam is what I'm using right now as well. So that's on a MacBook. You can also use a PC. Most of our teachers who participate in the program are using PCs. And you can use an external webcam on your board computer if you don't have a computer with an internal one. It's not something that you need to invest a ton of money in. Usually the basic ones, or one step up from basic, is completely sufficient. If you have any questions at all, do give me a shout. I've got teachers who are using iPad minis and hooking them up to their projector. So just let me know if you want to try something out, and I can do a live test with you so that you can make sure it's satisfying your needs. So we talked a little bit about our expert book directory, and you're using the Zoom platform right now for a webinar. You use the same program when you do the VROC program with us, use the same software, but you have the extra capabilities of having a contact list and being able to connect directly with another user, an expert user in your case, to interact with your audio and video in both directions. So right now, you are passively receiving audio and video from myself and from Clayton, and you're not able to connect back with us verbally, with us seeing your video. In VROC, you do get that extra capability because it's a direct connection between your classroom and the expert. Expert Book is the tool that we use to find what expert you want to connect with. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch and show you our website and show you what that looks like. And if I'm looking to the side, it's because I have an extra monitor here. So let me just show you what it is that I am looking at. Okay, so now we have just my regular web browser. I typically use Chrome. It works with Safari. It works with Firefox, anything else that you regularly use. And this is, if you type in vroc.ca, here's where you land with our VROC webpage. And there is a button to get you to Expert Book from every VROC page in the header here or in the main page down here. if you're having a look at what it is that we're offering to you for educational programming, you can always click on this Experts on Demand page. That's sort of a synonym for the VROC program that we are talking about today. There's a bit more information here. There are some testimonials down here from teachers, some from experts. There's more if you click on the extra link. And there's a few other documents here. What I can warn you is that we are doing this session just in the middle of our switch over to Zoom. So some of this documentation is being updated in time for September. So you may find some references here to a different program called ClearSea that's being replaced with Zoom, and you'll find updated information there by the time we get to September. So if you're ready to look at ExpertBook, you just click on the ExpertBook link and it brings you to a sign-in page. You will have personal sign-in credentials once you sign up for the program, and I'll just show you what that looks like. Once you put in your username and password, you come to an ExpertBook search page. Here you have the option to enter any keywords that you wish to. You can enter keywords from the list here. We just have some suggestions, but you can also enter something completely different, like stem cell. I just type that in, hit enter or click search, and it will give me a list of experts. And in this list, I can see the name of the expert, a photo if they've uploaded a photo. I can see their title and their university or college. Their email address here is hyperlinked for you, and even some web links. So you can see maybe they have a web page for their research lab with some more detailed information about what it is that their research accomplishes, and some key topics that they've flagged that they can speak about. And then there is usually, for most of them, a longer bio here. If you want to see more information on Dr. Allison Allen, you can click on her name and it will load that full bio for you. So you always get about a 2 or 3 line snippet. Here you can see the rest of that. And also, we flagged what languages they can speak. We do offer this program in French as well. So if you teach some French immersion classes, you can search for French experts as well. And some of them have flagged what grades they feel comfortable speaking to or when they're usually available. Some of them are usually available Tuesday mornings or something like that. Or some of them want to make sure that everything's prearranged in advance. If you're teaching grade 7 and someone says they can speak to grade 9 to 12, I would always suggest that you reach out. Send them an email using the email address here and just tell them what it is that you're looking for. Sometimes the experts will shy away from a general question. If I ask them, would you be able to speak to a grade 4 class? They might say, I'm not really sure, be worried that I couldn't speak at the appropriate level. But if you give them a specific scenario of your grade 4 or your grade 7 class that you are learning XYZ and you want to speak to them about ABC and your students may have questions about blank, then I would say 9 times out of 10, that will be something they're confident they can do for you, and then you'll arrange a time and you'll have a great time. They even the really young kids always seem to come up with some great questions. So I usually have experts say that they didn't think they would be able to do that, but it was a great experience. So never hesitate. You can always ask. The worst that happens is that expert says, I'm sorry, I'm not really comfortable, or I'm too busy this week, or something like that. But never hesitate to ask. So from here, perhaps you decided Dr. Allen is not the right person. You want to go back to your list. You click the back button, and then you can search through the other experts that pop up. You can also see where in their bio your search terms show up, and that's useful because sometimes the context isn't exactly what you were looking for. So you can see we have quite a few for stem cells, etc. And you can search for anything in this search field. Clayton, would you like to comment at all on your use of ExpertBook in the past?
Sure, I'll talk to a couple of situations. I'll choose one that's slightly different. So I had a student who was doing a project that was beyond the typical class, and in her project, we were looking at the effects of fertilizer and effluent and other chemicals that were put in the lawns of residents and how it was affecting our watershed. So she picked 3 locations. One that was kind of we live in our school's in a relatively new subdivision. So 10 years ago, it was farm country. And then before that, it was just forest. So we picked an area that was in the Credit Valley watershed. There's a proper name for it. I can't remember what it is. And there was a spot that was north of our residence. There was a spot that was right in the midst of our school community. And then there's a spot that was relatively close to where the watershed went into Lake Ontario. And so she went in and she was testing the chemicals, the dissolved oxygen, nitrates, phosphates, all that kind of stuff. But she was also looking at the benthic invertebrates, so a lot of the organisms that were in the water. And I don't know how many of you have actually looked at things that are inside water. And it's really cool, right? You see a lot of things floating around, eating each other, but trying to identify it is really challenging, regardless of who you are. So we went to the expert book and we did a search looking for a person who could help us with how to set up an experiment and how to properly measure the biodiversity and the effects of these runoff into the water. And so we used several search terms, and we eventually did come up with Dr. John Smoltz, and he does a lot of limnology. So he was an expert. He was a chair of, I don't want to say a limnological association, but something related to professors and scientists who researched exactly what our question was. And so he kind of listened to the student and how she wanted to set up the experiment, and he gave suggestions. He didn't make the experiment for her. He just listened to what she had to say, and then he talked about, well, had you thought about this? Oh, did you realize that this particular chemical and this chemical, they interact? And did you think about sampling where the water slows down or where the water's speeding up? And have you looked at the quality of the water? He talked about safety. He offered to help us identify the organisms. So once we looked underneath the microscope and we were looking at these funky creatures that look like 10 or 15 different things in the books, we captured the video and we sent it off to him, or we showed him at the same time, and he immediately was able to help us identify some of the more obscure invertebrates, as well as help us to come to a conclusion as to what some of them might be, so maybe we could identify it. So as an expert, that was excellent. I mean, how often do you get a person who this is their field talking one-on-one? This is actually one-on-one with a student, because it was one student who was working on the project. She had some friends who were helping her. She did kind of fall in the river at one point, so that was kind of funny. We showed the video of that. But how often you get a professor who's just so personable and answering these questions for our student, and then also help our students recognize that these professors are very approachable. The other thing I want to bring up was, again, it's kind of about VROC and how helpful Stacey and VROC are. So another thing that we did recently, it was last year as a matter of fact, we do a lot of projects that are kind of beyond the curriculum, I guess, and it's for students who are trying to engage with the material. And so we had these grade 12s who are working on xenotransplantation. So with xenotransplantation, basically you're taking a part of another organism, pigs are often used, and you're taking that transplanted pancreas that's been potentially genetically engineered with some human DNA, and you're taking it out of the pig and you're putting it into a human, because we know that a lot of people who are waiting for their kidney transplant are unsuccessful because the system doesn't allow for the kidneys that come from the deceased, the recently deceased, to get in and distributed to a person who actually needs it. So as far as xenotransplantation is concerned, it's cutting edge, it's new, there's a lot of moral pieces. So the students were doing a typical stem cell type of project. In a stem cell project, you normally have stakeholders, so there'll be some students who are representing the doctors, the medical, the volunteer, the religious, the biotech, the CEOs, and all these students then go off and they do their research. And when you do a stem cell, you want an expert. You want a facilitator who knows something about what's going on. And so we went to the expert book and we started typing in xenotransplantation. And it's a big word, and it's very, very specific. And I think when we typed in xenotransplantation, we didn't get anyone. But a lot of people who would look at xenotransplantation don't actually say it on their list. They're more into the immune system, or they're more into transplantations, maybe even systems. So we typed in a few of those, and we saw like 6 or 8 people, and we sent people. We read their bios. We thought, okay, these are people who might have some understanding of xenotransplantation. We sent them off, and almost every single one of them responded saying, "Oh, it sounds really cool. I'd love to be a part of it, but I'm sorry, I don't actually know much about xenotransplantation." So then we talked to Stacey, and Stacey's like, well, because this is her world, and then she started doing some research, and she found some people and an organization, University Health Network, actually in Toronto, and these people had given talks about xenotransplantation, and she gave us information on how to contact them, and using the very same format as VROC would have, we contacted them in the same fashion. And even if it had not been through VROC, this experience that we did with the stem cell, having this facilitator come in, so at the end of it, what happened was we did end up with an expert who goes around the world talking about xenotransplantation. And when we had the students presenting their stakeholder perspectives, it was really interesting, because this doctor scientist, he had participated in these kind of stakeholder debates. And so as our religious people started talking about the yay or nay, the pros and cons, and the scientist students started talking about their pros and cons of their research, he came back and he didn't critique them per se. It wasn't negative. He was very positive. He was very supportive. And he's talking about, from his scientist, he says he sat in various countries in Australia and in Europe and in the Middle East, and he listened to the imams, and he used all the right terminology, and he was able to give this expert knowledge of how the religious people felt, and how the scientists felt, and how the volunteers felt. And it was an absolutely amazing experience having this scientist, doctor, facilitator for our stem cell. So those are 2 examples of how I've used the expert book recently. And if I had an opportunity to use this again, I absolutely would. I will use it again. As September rolls around, I'm going to find some experiences for our students. I'm not able to pre-book necessarily, because I do a lot of this where the students are driving it as opposed to I'm driving it. So I wait for them to ask the questions, because I have 31 kids. I know I'm not the expert, so having access to the experts in the expert book from the universities all across the province and the country is just something that I could not do what I'm doing in the class without.
Yeah.
So thanks, Stacey.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I'm always happy to do that. I remember when I got your original email, you were asking about the xenotransplantation, and I immediately, same thing, thought that sounds really cool. I have to make this happen for you. And I ended up with 2 different researchers within a day or 2. Of putting out a couple requests to people saying, well, I know this isn't your thing, to an expert that we have who does work with VROC regularly, but do you maybe know someone? And they're very quick to come back, especially if you have a special project like that, or you have students that could use a little inspiration. And I find they're always, all these experts, they're so keen to really inspire your students to wonder and to question and to understand how to go about science, and not to give them the answers or to just tell them how it is. They really want to get your students thinking and get them involved. And so you don't have to worry about getting a lecture from a VROC expert. It really is all about that interaction. So before I move on with anything else, I just want to check in. We have numerous questions here, just as you suggested, Clayton. Same thing with teachers as with students. Everyone's a little shy at first, and now we have a whole pile of questions. So Earl asks, is the same VROC expert able to speak to different class sections scheduled at different times or days? Absolutely. The only thing that you need to check in this instance is just that the expert is available during those times. And usually that's easy for them, because if you've already talked about what you want them to show your students, maybe a little slide deck for 5 minutes and then a bunch of questions, then they already have that put together. And so to do it another 1 or 2 times that week is usually an easy thing, and they're happy to do that. So just make sure you're clear in your ask when you email the expert, and I would say that yes, in most cases, that's no problem at all. What else do we have here? Can we specify a topic when asking for an expert? So that's when I would suggest, Miriam, that you go to Expert Book and type in your topic there. If you have trouble, let me know. But that's the first place that I go if you ask me specifically for a topic. So go and certainly have a look yourself, because you know your topic better than I do. So you're going to be able to find the most appropriate person there. As Clayton suggested, sometimes you may need to think of a synonym for your search word, and try a couple different things, because it's pulling words directly from those expert profiles. And if they haven't used your particular term, they may have used something very similar, and they may still be the most appropriate person to speak to your class. If you have trouble, don't hesitate. Reach out to me, send me an email, let me know what you're looking for, and I'll hook you up. What else do we have here? It looks like Clayton's been answering some questions too. No cost at all associated with the software. That was Selena. The Zoom software is actually freely available. You could download it on your own and use it personally, just like you would use Skype or Hangouts or FaceTime. But we essentially have an account for Partners in Research, and we would associate your profile with that account so that you have access to our contact list, and that would have all of the experts in it. So whether you download it on your own or not, in order to get access to the experts, you would need to sign up on our website, which I'll show you before we finish up today. Just signing up for the program so that we can associate your Zoom account or your Zoom profile with the Partners in Research account, and then you would be able to contact all of those experts. They're pre-populated, so unlike Skype, you don't have to exchange your usernames or anything like that. All of the experts that are in Expert Book would be available in the Zoom software. How can new experts join VROC Expert Book, or how do they seek their experts? So Rena, we do some recruitment. We either start with an email or phone call. We have meetings with new experts. I usually try to recruit new experts based on demand. And we also do this as we visit universities and colleges across Canada. Basically, we have all of these experts in our expert book as volunteers. So that also helps to weed out anyone who isn't really passionate about this. If they want to do outreach, they agree to participate in the program. If someone feels like they are too busy as an expert, or they're just not really into inspiring K-12 students, then they don't volunteer to be part of the program. So just keep in mind, as you are requesting experts time, they're volunteering that time for you. And they're usually quite happy to do so, but I'm sure they also appreciate thank yous. So what else do we have here? A comment, Miriam agreed. Good for students to be introduced to different topics outside the curriculum. You can also tie this really tightly to the curriculum if that's what you need to do, or that's just a goal for your class. Don't hesitate to do either thing. You can tie it tightly to the curriculum. You can do something that's completely out of left field. You can do something that is career-oriented or subject area-oriented in terms of what you discuss with that expert.
When you're talking about the career, one of the things that jumps to mind, I know we're a science group, teachers, but often we have that problem with math. And I know through VROC, one of the things that was actually pretty powerful as well is we had a couple professors. I can't remember his name because it's been a while, but the question was for the teacher was, how can I make math interesting? How can I show them that the math is actually applicable? They always ask me the question of, what are we going to do with this anyway? And so we had this professor, and he was really amazing. He was sitting down, he was in his t-shirt, and you couldn't see what he's wearing underneath, probably shorts, I think. And the kids, the first reaction was, he doesn't look like a professor. And he was sitting there talking, and he's all nonchalant, and he started just giving these examples. Okay, you know, you're in Wonderland, and you're in that line, and you're waiting for, you know, the best ride, Dragonfire. I'm probably dating myself because I think I was done in the 80s. But waiting for that ride, and you see what they do with the line and how they make it go around this, that, and the other thing. There's a lot of math in the cues, and they started talking about the stoplights and how you go from Lawrence Avenue to Lakeshore, and how you get from point A to point B, and all the examples he was giving was really cool, and things that the teacher and the students hadn't really thought of, but it was all very applicable with math, and so he was talking about the math career and how it was appropriate. So I just touching on with what you were saying, Stacey.
No, absolutely. Thank you. I find that too. The students seem to have this expectation of an unapproachable, very starchy person that they're going to connect with, and they're usually quite happy to see that these professors and instructors and other professionals, they are real, regular people, and they're usually quite approachable. So they're maybe a little shy at first, the first time they do it. And you'll find if you start to do VROC sessions several times with the same class, that period at the beginning where they're shy gets less and less and less each time. We also have a question from, is Susan that you said, Clayton? Are there review sections where teachers share their experiences like this, so we can get ideas of how these sessions can be conducted? I usually try to keep on Twitter if I see anybody sharing anything with the hashtag VROC in action. You can certainly follow Partners in Research on Twitter to get a few ideas. We don't currently have anything like this set up, but I like that idea, and we could certainly do that. Using the Zoom platform, you're able to have meetings with more than one individual, and you'll be able to see all the teachers from your school board or other school boards, as well as the experts in your contact list. So if you wanted to get together a personal learning network, a professional learning network, and do something like that, you can certainly use this platform to do it. And if you want to get something like that together, let me know. I'm happy to talk with you about it and see if we can maybe build that in to VROC and see what we can come up with, because I think that's a great idea. A lot of teachers come to me and say, I'm just not sure how to do this. I get the technology, but how do I really incorporate that into my lessons? So some sharing on that would certainly be welcome. Emily, is there a cost for the school for this program? No cost at all for the teacher, for the school board. It's all funded by government sources and post-secondary institutions, so that we can offer this program to you at no cost. Even the software, that's a free download. We bring you in under our account, no costs there either. The only cost would be if you needed hardware. So if you needed a computer to do this, but you probably have all of that already and you just need to pull it together. Do students have direct access to the expert book to ask these questions, or do they do it through the teacher? We do everything through the teacher as a gateway, Rena. That way we don't have any privacy concerns with minors contacting our experts directly. As volunteers, we don't require that they get the extra police checks that some boards would require them to have. So the teacher is always the supervisor of that interaction. So it's the teacher's login credentials that are used for ExpertBook. It is the teacher's login credentials for the Zoom account, etc., to use the software. But as Clayton said, you can do this as a whole class activity. You can do this for one student who has a special project, for small groups. It is up to you in how you supervise or how you structure your connections. But it is you who would have access to sign into these things. Let me just look here. Monica, can we include separate session for students or teachers once a month with their questions? Separate for students or teachers. Monica, I'm not sure if I understand your question correctly. I'll see if I can answer what I think you're asking. Separate for students or teachers, what I've seen in the past is sometimes a teacher will reach out to an expert by email, and then instead of emailing back and forth quite a bit, if they have something specific they want to make sure they're on the same page as the expert on, they might have a little practice session beforehand. Maybe at, after school one day, they'll connect with the expert a few days in advance of their scheduled connection with the class, talk about things, make sure that everybody's needs are being met, and then they'll connect with the class the next day or the day after that to have the actual VROC connection. If you're talking about subsequent connections with the same expert with students, perhaps to follow them through a design project or a curriculum unit, that's also something that we do. We refer to it as a mentorship usage of the program, and that you have one individual expert that you are contacting multiple times over a span of weeks, months, or a full semester or a full year. If you need any help setting something like that up, let me know. I'm happy to help you out. If I did not answer your question, let me know, and we can I can sort of re-answer it again later in this session, or we can connect by phone or email and take it from there. After a session with an expert, are we still able to stay in touch with email or other chat option to get back their feedback on students' progress or doubts after the session? Absolutely, that's an individual thing. I can't see any of our experts saying no to corresponding by email after. You can also schedule a follow-up session. You can use this program as long or as often as you want and the expert is available. So you're limited only by everyone's availability. You don't have to worry about using VROC once and then thinking, oh, you've used up your allotment. The program is available to you all year long, no matter how often you use it. So I would say in that case, an email might be the thing to do if you have a quick question from a student who came up with that question afterward. If there are lots of questions, then by all means, see if the expert can reconnect with you through Zoom again, and then have another Q&A. Whatever suits you at that point, absolutely follow up. Is the session with an expert recorded? Can you get back to the same session later? Miriam, you have the ability with the Zoom platform to record locally. All I would caution you with is that you need to get consent from the expert to do so. The expert has the ability to record as well, but you will always be able to see in the top left-hand corner of your screen if something's being recorded. So rest assured, you cannot be recorded without your knowledge. But if you want to record something, I've never heard of an expert saying no. I've had that request a few times from teachers. Absolutely record it. Maybe you have some students who are away that you want to make sure they don't miss out. Maybe they're on a field trip or away sick, whatever, that you can show it to them later. Or maybe you just want to refer back to some of the answers they got to their questions. You can record that locally on your own computer and then refer to that later. I believe it's recorded as an MP4. Selena says this reminds her of what Chris Hadfield did in outer space. Yes, I would love to get Chris Hadfield to do this for us. We'll see if I can get him for a live event. I hear he's a little in demand. But absolutely, same idea. You can do this from anywhere. I've had experts who have gone to academic conferences and connected from China in the middle of the night to talk to students in Canada, or a mentor who was connecting with students in Senegal, and he used to get up at home at 6 a.m. to turn on his computer, connect from home, and they even got to meet his 2.5-year-old daughter, who was also learning about chromosomes as he was talking to the students in Senegal, and she would wave to them, etc. So a lot of them are willing to either connect from their office, show you around their lab, or maybe while they're on the go, they can take this software with them and connect with you from anywhere. So it's really flexible like that. Are these sessions free for private schools also? Miriam, this is a short-term answer, yes. Long-term, it's an indefinite yes. But some of our funders are specifically focused on publicly funded schools. So I would say for now, for this school year, absolutely yes. And I would have to refresh that yes on a yearly basis for you. The live broadcast, like we're doing now, is very similar to Chris Hadfield, yes. To get in touch with me if you have any other relevant questions, I will put that up on the screen right now. And this video is being recorded, and I'll make that recording available to you. So you can feel free to jot information down or just refer to the recording later. So you can get a hold of me by email. That's probably the best way. Here I've also listed for you the VROC website, the Partners in Research website that has some of the other programming like live event, the biotechnology competition, etc., and information on VROC. We've got a Facebook page, a YouTube channel. We're on Twitter at Partners in Res, and you can follow the hashtag VROC in action to see some examples from teachers. I'm just sifting through these questions, Clayton. Is there anything else right now that you were thinking of, you needed an opportunity to interject?
Not at the moment. We've covered so much. I've given a lot of examples. It's probably really overwhelming for most of them hearing about the expert book and the contacting the person who might talk to them for a month, or the Sanofi, which wasn't really mentioned, or the everything you've mentioned. I think you have covered quite a bit.
Excellent. I agreed. I wanted to make sure you knew everything that was out there, but it is a lot at once. Don't hesitate to contact me. I pride myself on working with you to make this a success for you. That's my favorite part of my job. So just know that I'm happy to pull through for you on things like that. That covers everything that I wanted to get to today. Questions seem like they are sort of drying up now. Everyone's saying, thank you, amazing, this is great, thanks so much for saying so. And I hope that we can work with you this year so that you can incorporate this in your class. I'm just going to show you where you sign up. Again, there's no fees associated with that. But it just allows us to report back a little bit of information to our funders on who's using the program, and have some contact information for you just in case we ever need to get a hold of you. So right from any web page, Partners in Research or vroc.ca, there's a sign up button right in the top that'll bring you to this page, and you can fill out just this short little web form. Tells us who you are, where you teach, what grade and subjects you teach, how you heard about us, include any comments or questions that you have, and then just click submit. And we'll get back to you at that point with an email invitation to Zoom and an email with some information on how you access Expert Book and some other supports. And there's certainly a lot of support from the Zoom platform automatically, and we're happy to fill in any gaps you need along the way. Thank you so much for joining us today, everybody, and I hope you have a great day. And thanks, Clayton, for setting all of this up.
Thanks, Stacey. We really appreciate you sharing VROC.
All right. Well, everybody have a great day, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.